It's one of the, by the way, it's one of the largest and deepest lakes on Earth.
Yeah,
It's over 1,500 feet deep.
That's crazy.
It's unbelievable,
A
right?
lake.
I mean, Baikal in Siberia is the deepest, but this on a scale of others, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's deeper than most of the Great Lakes. It's very, very deep lake. And it has a very unique environment. It's what's known as a soda lake, an alkaline lake. We got to see some private off-limits sites that were remarkable, and all the research and a lot of the things that I've talked about that we built up has really come to a different place now. It's quite exciting.
What makes it in a different place now?
Well, when you go to these locations, actually get a chance to investigate them, see them, you see a lot of things that you've never seen before. When you're looking online, you only have so much in front of you. You know, who's taking pictures of this, who's taking video of this, but what about the things that didn't get photographed or you didn't see? Things that you're there in person. Even just being there gives you a different experience of those locations. And for me, being there with a team of experts, you know, I just got back from Turkey on my second trip in early October with Dr. Robert Schock.
Oh, you went with him?
Famous geologist, and we went with an
Wow.
archaeologist named Hans Orheim out of Sweden. We got a chance to go and scout out some of the locations that they need to see as well before we do filming this year. That we're going to be going and doing a whole team of experts is going to be going with me to film a lot of sites, including underwater, under Lake Von.
Who's doing the underwater shots?
Well, we have a team of underwater divers that are going to be coming, and one of the things I can bring up is that the person who discovered the underwater ruins in 2017, and that's a great story I can tell.
Please.
Okay, well, his name is Tossin Salen, and he is a pretty famous underwater photographer and videographer.
And tell people where, just for people who haven't heard you in the past on this show, you've talked about Lake Von, but just give them a layout of like where this is in Turkey and what the significance is.
A lot of the ancient world has these hot spots that people talk about, right? Everyone's talking about Göbekli Tepe over and over again, right? Terihan Tepe, but they're not talking about a lot of these newer places because they haven't hit the mainstream. It's not something that most people really know about, and the reason is that they're too new. For instance, the underwater Lake Von discoveries that I'm referring to, that wasn't found until 2017. And so we're talking about very, very new discoveries that the world has not grasped yet. And the reason is that archaeologists have mislabeled them from, in my opinion, from the wrong time period, which has created a scenario where people are like, oh, well, that's not that interesting. It's, you know, it's from this time period, when really what we're looking at are places that are equally, if not older than Göbekli Tepe, in my opinion.
What are the archaeologists labeling on a time period scale Lake Von, and what do you think it actually is?
So the Lake Von region was part of what's called the Urartian civilization that archaeologists are crediting for. And I obviously agree that was a major civilization in that region. That was around 2800 BC. Okay, so about 3,000 years ago. There was a civilization there that was during the same time as the Neo-Assyrian civilizations further south in ancient Mesopotamia, right? Ashurbanipal, Sennacherib, we've talked about them before. There was a competition going on over empires fighting during that time period, and they were being invaded constantly, and they were a war civilization. Now that group, the Urartians, is what archaeologists believe built all of these sites around not only Lake Von, but further east in Armenia and other locations. And we can talk about why they believe that and what we're getting into. But what really broke this open is that, getting back to what I was just referring to, Lake Von in eastern Turkey, it's one of the largest and deepest lakes on Earth. It's over 1,500 feet deep.
That's crazy.
It's unbelievable,
A
right?
lake.
I mean, Baikal in Siberia is the deepest, but this on a scale of others, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's deeper than most of the Great Lakes. It's very, very deep lake. And it has a very unique environment. It's what's known as a soda lake, an alkaline lake. And this actually can tie into a lot of the exciting news that we're going to get into, is because it's a soda lake, it creates an environment that preserves things underwater. And it has these massive type of structures from the salt formations that have created these incredible, almost like dreamlike environments of these towers underwater.
What's the science there? Why does that preserve it? My head would immediately think that it would do the opposite, but why does it not?
If you get a lake that has river outlets, you get a current flowing through it. You're going to get moving water. You're going to get moving sediments. You're going to get an environment underwater that is more volatile. Okay. When you have an alkaline environment, it doesn't create a scenario where there is as much acidification to like breaking down of materials underwater. It actually creates a preservation type of quality. And that is what we're finding in Lake Vaughan. It's the best example in the world of a soda alkaline lake. There's no better example than that. And because of that, it's created this preservation underwater. Again, as I say, these giant towers of basically alkaline, like calcified environments that have formed because of the amount of sodium. There's only one fish that lives in the entire lake. It's called a pearl mullet.
They only have one fish?
Only one fish lives in the entire lake. There's nothing else.
There's no other life.
There's some small little shrimp-like creatures and some types of insects, but there's no other fish that live in the entire lake. It's a very unusual type of scenario. And that's what leads to what I'm about to tell you, is that this wasn't even an archaeologist. There's a famous videographer, underwater photographer, Towson Salin, who travels all over the world. Yeah, Tahsin, Towson Salin, Seylan.
And Lake Vaughan.
And he primarily does underwater ocean photography in the Red Sea and off of Egypt and other places around the world. He's actually quite popular, and he's been in a number of different high-level type of documentaries and others. Well, he came to Turkey. Well, he lives in Turkey, but he came to Lake Vaughan because he wanted to photograph the underwater microinvertebrate type of environments underwater and the life. It's a beautiful lake. I mean, Lake Vaughan is surrounded by the Taurus Mountains to the south and this huge mountain volcano to the north called Sufan Mountain that's over 13,000 feet high. Huge volcano. And because it's surrounded by giant mountains and it's this huge kind of crystalline lake, it's beautiful. It's got like blue water because of the salt. The lake literally looks blue. I got a chance to go swim in it.
You did? I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I went down with Robert Schock and my girlfriend Jenny and Hans, and we got a chance to swim in it. It's one of the most beautiful lakes I've ever seen, and I've hiked and traveled to a lot of beautiful lakes in the world. But I have to say, Lake Vaughan is arguably one of the most beautiful lakes I've ever been to.
And there's only one type of fish in it, so it's almost like swimming through like a freshwater pond, but it's 1,600 meters deep or whatever.
In fact, there's arguments that they may have never found the true depth of the lake, because I was talking to fishermen there and our tour guide, who have depth sounded the lake. They catch those pearl mullet nets. Yeah, there's tossing, and you can see
there's like a
stuff.
lot of them. There's
huge schools of them, but it's the only fish in the lake. So you can see like the image of the underwater stuff under Lake Vaughan. That's Towson.
Now, so Towson's swimming there, and I can see it looks like he has a light up above that. Do you know like how deep he got for something like this?
Well, and that's that's the big part of what we're going to get into is the depth. That's actually a really big part of this. Okay. It's important. So Towson is photographing in different parts of the lake. Okay. He's doing photography of the migrations of the pearl mullets in the spring when they spawn, right? They flood the rivers and they're like jumping all over the place. It's quite a spectacle. The pearl mullets are not, they're not more than a foot long, but they're huge schools of them in the lake, okay? So he's photographing that as a nature documentary, but he's also photographing and filming the underwater areas, which, by the way, there's been very little done under Lake Vaughan. It's a very mysterious lake. So he's filming off of Akdamar Island and in these different areas, and there are a number of different ruins that are known about under Lake Vaughan, but they're shallow. Well, he's diving off of a place called Ajijivez, which is in the northern part of Lake Vaughan in 2017. And you can only dive in the lake for the first 2 hours in the morning, because once you get into the afternoon, the sunlight reflects off of all the salt and it makes it so you can almost not even see underwater. So you have this small window where you can actually dive. Okay, so he's diving off of Ajijavez, which is right adjacent to Kef Kalesi, an ancient megalithic site that I talked about on some of the other shows, and I've subsequently gone to, and we can talk about that as well. So he's diving off of that, and there are ruins down near the edge of the shoreline, but there had never been anything done out underwater. So he's underwater and he's diving, and he gets down to 75 feet underwater. 75 feet underwater. Unbelievably deep area, which, by the way, there's no underwater ruins in the world that are found at that depth. Anywhere in the world, yes. If you go off of, like, for instance, there are underwater ruins in Lake Titicaca.
Yeah.
They're like 20, 30 feet at max.
You're just talking about for lakes, though.
No, in oceans included.
What about the ruins that are off the coast of Cuba?
Well, that's not okay. Hold on. We'll pause there for a second.
Okay.
That may exist, and there is a lot of evidence that supports that it does exist. But we don't have enough evidence yet. And I talked about that last time we were on.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the context because I just had NEXT in here. We had a long little segment in there where he was going through whether or not that could be true or not. So I couldn't remember all the evidence, but
it's too deep for that. Those ruins off of Cuba are too deep for an actual diver to go to, right? They're 2,000 feet underwater, which means you need a submersible to get down there and look at them. Now that's a whole
Titanic situation,
right? That's a whole argument in itself of whether or not that's real. And I've talked about that before on episodes. It is very interesting. More exploration is needed to completely confirm that.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.